It's a great pleasure to welcome Maestro Nagano here in the studio with me, my special guest who needs no introduction to long-term DW viewers because of classical masterpieces, the DVD box set of 6 of the world's great symphonies. Now, it was made over a decade ago,
yes,
but they were great shows on the TV, and there was a great DVD box set. And I think you chose. Did you choose the symphonies that were to be used?
It was a result of a dialogue with Deutsche Welle. We went through a series of suggestions, and I would say it was more of a consensus that this group of composers could give at the same time a very long perspective of classical music and at the same time offer some profundity.
Yeah. And do you have a favourite, putting you on the spot, of those symphonies?
I must say that in the end, all of the choices, it was from among my list. And each one of those projects were very, very special. It finished with the Bruckner symphony, and so I would have to say, of course, as a culmination, that stands out in my memory.
They were very quirky sort of things in that it wasn't just the symphonies. You explained things. There was cartoons in that. Do you think that's a good way to promote classical music?
I don't really know. The main thing is that classical music actually has a content that is not tied to fashion. It's not tied to mode. It's not tied to any particular moment of time. These are timeless masterpieces, and they establish their relevance for generation after generation. I think what we tried to do was to try to speak to a range of population, different backgrounds, different ages, but it was definitely tied to that particular moment, which is the early part of the 2000s. I haven't seen these projects in quite a while. I would be interesting to see how much of it translated to 2019.
Kent Nagano grew up on a farm in California without television, movies, or even a record player. Instead, there was a piano. He started conducting a church choir at the age of 8. The son of an architect and a microbiologist, he studied music and biology before moving to Europe. His career has taken him to Lyon, Manchester, Berlin, Munich, and Hamburg. For the 67-year-old, the world of sound is his home.
We never stay in the same place at the same time, and really this mentioning of the small farm that I grew up on the Pacific coast, that California doesn't really exist anymore. California has evolved and become very, very different today, as it should. So you ask where I feel at home, where home is. I must say that it is where sound is, it is where music is, and it's where the family is. And I think for most people, that's probably true.
You were chief conductor of the Deutsche Symphonie-Orchestra, 2000 to 2006. I remember it well. I remember it because you blew away a lot of cobwebs, I thought. You played a lot of contemporary music, brought a lot of younger people, I thought, to music. But recently I saw you in an interview saying that you felt that classical music wasn't accessible enough. Why is this? Or is it getting more accessible?
Yes, somehow things get lost in translation sometimes. When you hear classical music is not accessible enough, the impulse is to think that there's a problem with classical music. But actually, the problem is not with Mozart. There is no problem with Johann Sebastian Bach. This is perfection as far as aesthetics, as far as thinking, as far as humanity is concerned. No, the problem is actually simply in our modern world to have the exposure to classical music so that particularly the younger generation who are at a disadvantage from, say, my generation, where we were exposed regularly to classical music within the school curriculum, within the church curriculum. Today, it's much more difficult in our new lifestyles to have a connection unless it comes from the family. And that's more what I meant. There's really, as far as the great masters of our composition, of our repertoire, they are completely accessible. This is the most profound form of humanity that we can have.